There is mounting outrage today over U.S. President Donald Trump's claims about NATO troops who fought in Afghanistan. In an interview with Fox News, Trump suggested that they were little help during the war against the Taliban in Afghanistan and stayed away from the front lines.
We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little off the front lines.
Trump's comments are drawing backlash from world leaders, including British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The UK suffered more than 400 deaths in Afghanistan. Starmer says Trump was wrong to diminish the role of NATO troops.
I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country.
Prince Harry has also weighed in on Trump's comments. He was twice deployed to Afghanistan as part of the British Armed Forces in his 10-year military career. In a statement, he says, in 2001, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first and only time in history. It meant that every allied nation was obliged to stand with the United States in Afghanistan in pursuit of our shared security. Allies answered that call. I served there. I made lifelong friends there. And I lost friends there. The United Kingdom alone had 457 service personnel killed. Thousands of lives were changed forever. Mothers and fathers buried sons and daughters. Children were left without a parent. Families are left carrying the cost. Those sacrifices deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect as we all remain united and loyal to the defense of diplomacy and peace. More than 40,000 members of the Canadian Armed Forces served, and 158 Canadian soldiers died during the Afghanistan mission. Nigel Williams did 2 tours of Afghanistan as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. He joins me now live from Windsor, Ontario. Nigel, appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Having just heard the president's remarks, what's your reaction as someone who was there?
Well, I think my initial reaction, obviously, with like everybody else, is rage and anger and disappointment because, everybody has a different perspective of what happened down there, except for the people who were there. We all have the same perspective. We all know what happened and how it went. So it's unfortunate, and it's saddening.
And tell us about, the Canadians, where they served, Kandahar, because for the president to suggest that that is far from the front lines, I mean, really, it is not. Kandahar was the front line.
Kandahar was the front line. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Maybe, clearly his perspective on it was different than mine. I thought those were real bullets and real IEDs that was happening and exploding around us. So maybe he didn't. I don't know. But Kandahar was something else. Kandahar was everything, everybody thinks about what war is. That was Kandahar.
Yeah, I just want to quote, this is from a retired Corporal Bruce Moncourt, who said this. He said, "We were the front line," referring to Canada. "We took over Kandahar from the Americans because of their war in Iraq. We alleviated those forces so they could move to Iraq. We were as front line can get." Would you agree with that kind of description?
1,000,000%. In 2006, one PPCLI, or I should say Task Force Orion, was tasked with going down there and being basically the tip of the spear. We took over Kandahar and all of RC South as a whole, and we did an amazing job. And many would say we bit off more than we can chew, but what we as Canadians do, we do more with less, and we helped out everybody. And by no means am I diminishing what the Americans did, because the Americans are awesome. I really don't have a lot of time for anti-American rhetoric when it comes to their military, because they're fantastic. However, I think to a man, if you ask any American who has ever served with any Canadian, they'll say that, we some bad boys down here.
And I mean, the reason we're having this conversation is because it sure sounds like the president of the United States is minimizing your contribution and the contribution of 40,000 Canadian soldiers.
Sure. I mean, obviously that's what he's doing. There is no sugarcoating. There's that. He is minimizing what Canada and what the other allies have done, which again is very unfortunate. But again, everybody has an opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. We're entitled to disagree with that opinion.
You're being very polite about it, Nigel. I mean, I'm sure. Did you lose friends, or do you know of people who were injured? Because we know 158 soldiers, 165 Canadians overall, if you include civilians, died in a very dangerous part of that country in that war, Kandahar.
Yes, absolutely. I lost friends. We do, it's funny because we focus on two groups of people in Afghanistan. We focus on obviously the ones that didn't make it back. And then we also focus on the guys that made it back. But what we don't focus, there's a third group, the people that made it back but aren't okay, either that be, physically hurt or mentally hurt or what have you. And, I'm pretty sure some of those individuals have some pretty strong opinions about all of this. And again, it flies in the face of those individuals, right? They put their lives on the line in an extremely bad spot, right? Of the world. We did it without hesitation, without nobody said that we had to. We did it because it was our job, and we did it for each other. And we would much rather do it there than do it on our borders, right? So, for someone, this time it's the president. For if it was anyone, for someone to say anything contrary to that diminish our involvement. It's quite. It can come across as quite insulting for sure.
And what about to the families who lost soldiers in that war?
Absolutely. I obviously I will never speak for those families, but I'm pretty sure there'll be some strong opinions coming from those families. I mean, listen, say what you want to say, but try to say that to a mother who buried a son, or a wife who buried her husband, or a husband who buried his wife. That's not going to go over very well at all. That's not going to go over very well at all. And I wish someone in his administration could maybe counsel him a little better about our involvement and our contributions. But I'm not part of his administration.
We also heard from someone else who served in Afghanistan, Prince Harry. I read a statement a few minutes ago. I just want to reread one little part of it. Those sacrifices deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect, as we all remain united and loyal to the defense of diplomacy and peace. What does that mean to you to have, someone like Prince Harry speak out like that?
Well, I was actually there when Prince Harry was there. So the time at the time, Afghanistan was a hotbed. So he knows what he's talking about, and he's 1,000,000% correct. Everything we talk about when it comes to Afghanistan and the sacrifices that were made in Afghanistan has to be spoken about with respect and honor. You can have your own political opinions, and that's okay. But when it comes to that, it has to be spoken about with respect and honor.
And finally, Nigel, Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to speak a little later this afternoon after this cabinet retreat. Reporters are going to ask him questions. We expect him to be asked about this. What would you like to hear from him? We heard the Keir Starmer, saying it's insulting, it's appalling. What would you like to hear from this country's Prime Minister?
Well, I'd like to hear him stand behind his troops, period. Period, point blank. Stand behind your troops. Stand behind the people who stood in front of you, right? You don't see troops standing behind. We stand in front. So stand behind the troops. Defend the troops the way only you can from that position. And that's what I would like to hear. And, if he does that, I'll be happy. But we'll have to wait and hear the speech.
Nigel, appreciate your time. Thank you. Canadian Armed Forces veteran Nigel Williams in Windsor, Ontario.